All right, I want to thank everyone for joining today. My name is Daniel Kain from Pantonium, and this is the first of our webinar series exploring some of the challenges that NEMT operators have. So the first one here that we're going to be talking about is the value of a vehicle and how integral vehicles are to the operating of NEMT businesses, of course, but also how by eliminating vehicles and doing more trips on fewer vehicles, this is really how operators can drive growth and increase their profit margins. To get started, the first thing we'll look at is just the objective of this webinar. First, it's really just to look at a lot of the cost factors facing NEMT operators. Second, we'll discuss some of the challenges that operators face when routing their vehicles, and we'll also talk about how technology can play a role in that and how it's changing the NEMT landscape currently. And at the very end, we'll also do a brief demonstration of Pantonium's route optimization software and how using that we can actually drive more trips on fewer vehicles and reduce some of our costs. So the purpose of this is really to look at the stats. Now, I went through the IBIS World Report for 2014, and I found some interesting stats about NEMT operators that they took on average. So first, they found that 39% of all gross revenue is used to pay driver wages, which is quite an astounding number that close to 40% of all of the revenue that's being brought in by transportation companies goes to paying the drivers. Next, they found that 6% of all gross revenue is spent on fuel. So this is one of the very interesting things about this report was how low that number is. A lot of technologies out there and optimizations focus solely on fuel efficiency and reducing mileage and saving on fuel costs. When you look at the grand scheme of an NEMT operator, fuel makes up a relatively small percentage of that. So optimizing and reducing fuel expenses may not actually be the thing that companies should be focusing on. It should be focusing more on reducing driver wages. And the report also found that 40% roughly of revenue goes towards either fleet maintenance, capital depreciation, and rent. So when you look at this, you can see that upwards of 70% of all the expenditure that's going out of an NEMT operator is going to their drivers and their vehicles. So really, when you look at that, it shows that the single greatest area of improvement is to actually run with fewer vehicles. And when you factor in dispatcher wages, system costs, and other overhead, it shows that operators are left with only about an 8% profit margin on average, which is quite low. And that's not even before the owner takes a salary or takes a profit from the company. So one of the things that has been pretty rampant in the industry over the last few years is stagnant growth. Is that we're seeing a lot of small companies pop up and to meet the demand, but we're not seeing a lot of internal growth within industry players already. So a lot of companies are not, who are at the 20 or 30 vehicle plateau, they're not rapidly growing beyond that. And one of the reasons really is that the profit margin in the trips that they're doing is simply too low. It's hard to grow when you have very little money that you can reinvest back into your business to buy more vehicles, to go sell more contracts, and to get more trips. So what you're seeing is that a lot of these companies are starting to plateau, and they're starting to stay at their 20 or 30 vehicle levels and not grow beyond that. So that leads very nicely into exploring some of the operator challenges. So one of them, of course, is below profit margin. I already talked about that. Some other ones are really declining per trip revenue, and that compounds the problem with profit margin, is that now in 40 states now there are the adopted broker model. So a lot of these players, Logisticare, MCM, and Accessticare, that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, they actually run the NEMT trips through a lot of these different states. So there are a lot of great things about the broker model, just having an organized place where all trips are done, and it makes it easier at the end for a lot of the riders. But there are also a lot of negatives to it. And one of them specifically is that the price and the revenue that companies are bringing in is being driven down. These brokers are constantly driving down price by using competition to lower the price point of these trips. So we've seen over the last few years, as the broker model has expanded, a lot of the revenue is being steadily decreased for normal NEMT operators. Other challenges are just building schedules around dynamic trips. These are day-to-day challenges. There are a lot of NEMT companies that have upwards of 20 or 30% cancellation rates. You compound that with return trips that don't have specified times and add-on trips throughout the day. And it's very difficult to build an efficient schedule when there's all these different moving pieces that you have to account for. On top of these rider restrictions, you have a lot of different riders who can't travel together, or riders who have specific requirements that need to be accommodated by certain vehicles. So it's not as easy as, pick up A, pick up B. There are a lot of factors that need to be considered by these dispatchers and these schedulers that they need to account for. And really, I talked a bit about this before, it's just trying to get through the day. You have all of these dynamic trips and all of these things that people are trying to do, and they're not so focused on building efficient routes as much as they're focused on just getting through the day, just getting all of those riders onto a vehicle and getting them to their appointments on time. That schedulers don't have a lot of time to think about, what's the mileage that I'm driving, what's the capacity that I'm reaching, how much money am I saving my employer. So these are not things that typically they think about. But one of the things that I wanted to do was talk a bit about an example. So this is company XYZ. This is actually a real company. Obviously, we've renamed it. We dealt with a couple of years ago and ran through our optimization. So the way that they were running was approximately 8 vehicles each day. They were averaging 55 to 60 trips with a gross revenue just under $2,000 per day. They pay their drivers $13 an hour and work 8-hour shifts on average. So if you look at their numbers, they're running $832 per day in labor wages. So if you look at our stats of about 39% accounts for driver labor, they're right on that trend. So $830 per day in labor wages, that works out to $104 per day per driver. Now, the cost of that vehicle is much higher than that. We talked about fleet maintenance and insurance that gets spread over the course of a year. It would probably bring that cost closer to $200 to run that vehicle for the day. But for simplicity's sake, we'll just take the $104 per day model. So what I want to do with that information in mind is I want to pull up our route optimization and just show a little bit about what we did with these stats and what we did with this particular client's numbers. So what we have here, as you'll see, is we have our 55 trips. We're doing it on our 8 vehicles. And this is our typical route optimization screen here. And what you'll see is that we have a constraint and a penalty-based route optimization. And what that means is that rather than just looking at mileage and overall cost, which is something that we do, it gives operators the ability to define their own preferences and choose what really is crucial to how they want to optimize. So as a general rule, the higher the penalty, the more severe you make it, the more important it becomes, and the more that the system will try and emulate that result. We have things such as preset time penalty. This is just a function of on-time percentage. How important is it to you as an operator that all of your trips arrive on time? We have duration penalty. How important is it to you that your drivers don't work overtime? And we have load penalty and a lot of different other ones. But specifically, the one that I want to talk about today is vehicle penalty. This is, what is the cost of running an extra vehicle on this day? What is the cost between running 7 vehicles and 8 vehicles? And how much do you want to reduce the amount of vehicles that you have on the road? As we talked about, upwards of 70% of all expenditure for an NEMT operator is just a vehicle. So really, when you're trying to optimize, the thing that should be focused on is vehicle penalty. How can I run these 55 trips on as few of these 8 vehicles as possible? Because that's what's going to result in me saving the most money. So I'm just going to hit start here, and you'll see that it'll run through. It'll take just about 30 or 40 seconds to do this, and this is a scalable process. So I'm doing it for 55 trips on 8 vehicles. I know a lot of you operate a lot larger fleets than that, and this is a scalable process. It'll work just the same for 80 vehicles as it does for 8. So what we'll see is it's calculating mileage, it's taking into consideration all of my constraints. But one of the really important things to look at here is our empty vehicles. So what the system's trying to do is it's actually trying to increase this number of empty vehicles and run on as few vehicles as we possibly can. So we'll see here, it's almost done. And once it's complete, what it's going to do is it's going to run through and actually create all the schedules and assign them to these vehicles. So we can see here it's done. And what we found is we found 3 empty vehicles. So I gave the system 8, and it was able to do all 55 trips in 5 rather than 8 vehicles. Now what I can do is I can click Show Visual here, and what it's going to do is give me these line items of all of my vehicles that are running today. If I click on it, I can see the rider's name, obviously it would be a real name, the appointment time, planned ETAs for when they should arrive, address, handling time, etc. So all the details that you would need for a schedule are built, and we've now built 5 schedules in a matter of 1 minute for all of these trips. We've done it in what is an optimal way based on the preferences that I've set. Now, one of the things that you'll notice in how we were able to do this is by looking at the capacity, is that you can see that at every step of the way throughout this day, I was doing multiple pickups and multiple drop-offs and maximizing the capacity of the vehicle that I was driving. So the reason we were able to cut vehicles is that the system knows the capacity of these vehicles and is trying to maximize it. It's trying to fit as many people as possible onto each one of these vans so that we can eliminate vehicles from the schedule. So what we've done here is you can see is there's multi-loads throughout the whole time of the schedule that the system has found, and that's what's really driven down our marginal costs and allowed us to run a lot more efficiently. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint here and summarize a few of the results that we have. So the end result is with Pantonium, are running 23 hours 49 minutes in labor per day spread across those 5 vehicles versus 64 hours in the old model where they were running 8 vehicles on 8 hours per day. So if you look at the difference in wages, that's $312 in wages versus $832 the way that they were running before. That's a savings on that day with those numbers of $520. So if you were to achieve those results every day, you'd be saving, well, tens and tens of thousands of dollars every single month using this method and just building different efficiencies. So this is just driver wages. This does not consider insurance. This does not consider fleet maintenance, and it doesn't consider dispatch time that's saved either. So the natural question of this is it realistic? Well, every so often, I'll speak with customers or prospective clients who can achieve these results, but I wouldn't say that that's particularly common. Trying to cut the workforce and your driver workforce by 40% is not a common result. But there's never been a company that I've worked with where using our route optimization, we weren't able to cut at least 1 vehicle on that schedule every single day. And really, just look at the value of that 1 vehicle. You could save over $100 per day in operating costs just in driver wages. As I said, that number will probably be closer to $200. But even for someone who's running a 30 or 40 vehicle fleet, just think about the savings and the amount of marginal cost that you're driving down by taking just 1 vehicle off the road. And that's a very realistic result with the technology that's available today with route optimization. So it's just something to think about where, in a space and in a time for NEMT operators where profit margins are so low, one of the things that's commonly overlooked is, methods that can eliminate vehicles from the schedule. And that's really what's going to drive that profit margin upwards. Thank you for joining me for the first of this webinar series. There will be a few more. I'll keep everyone posted. If you want to reach out to me for a private demo or learn some more information, my contact information is on the right-hand side here. You can also find out more information at www.pantonium.com. Thank you.